In the era of AI, the key to success is context, the right requirements, driving clarity. Software engineers need to know what to build and why more than ever before. Today on the Product Driven podcast, I'm interviewing Seth Rosenbauer, who's built some really cool tool to use AI to help build better documentation for engineers. We're talking about that, but we're also going to talk a lot about engineering and how AI is impacting it. To survive and thrive, you must adopt a product-driven mindset. And we're back for another episode of Product Driven. This is your host, Matt Watson. Today I'm joined by Seth Rosenbauer. He is the founder and CEO of Jogger, which has a cool AI docs platform. And excited to talk today about requirements, documentation, AI, how all these things are affecting software development. We know that when you use AI, the more context you give it, the better job it will do with anything, be it writing social media, writing a book, writing code, any of it. But also we need that information to create good docs, and the code itself can help create good docs. So there's a cool conversation with Seth today. Seth, welcome to the show, man.
Welcome, Matt. Thanks for asking me to join. It's been awesome.
So AI is going to replace all of us and we're all out of a job, right? Is that where we start?
That's what everybody would like to say. I think if you're building AI applications, you might have a slightly different opinion.
Well, here's my hot take on it. I think for some things, AI is overcomplicating our life as well. So example of this is, in the past, we might write a social media post, we spend a few seconds on it, a few minutes on it, and we post it and we move on with life. What do you do now? You basically go to AI and ask it for permission and its opinion on, is this the right thing? How can I make this post better? Like, you overanalyze and overcomplicate everything, right? And we're asking AI to basically give us permission to live our life every day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's also what we've done.
I'm laughing because that's actually what I do with a lot of my posts.
Yeah, right? So there you go. Yeah. Now, you could argue, well, it's making my post better and stuff, and that may be true, and that's fine. But you know what I mean? Like, there's also tasks that we do on a daily basis now that instead of just making a quick decision and doing it, like, you end up down a 2-hour rabbit hole of your social media strategy every time you go to post something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I definitely feel like we're in this phase where folks still haven't quite figured out where the boundaries of the technology are, or where is it actually applicable? You should always use it for this. Where is it just overkill? And I still think folks, whether it be software team or otherwise, are starting to figure that out.
I think a lot of us in our day-to-day life are seeking certainty, right? Like, we want to know, are we doing things the right way? We don't want to take risks. We don't want to make mistakes, right? And so people may use AI to help, drive that certainty, make sure am I doing this the right way and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. But yeah, it could slow us down. But when it comes to software engineering, the engineering team needs this sort of certainty and clarity to do their job, right? Which is what we're here to talk about today. They need that sort of clarity, or they don't know what software to build or how to engineer, what matters to the customer, the product vision, all these different kinds of things. And all that information is also super powerful for writing the code, giving AI all this context. It's also really powerful for docs and other things. So I guess, tell me, Seth, what is your take on that part of it?
In just the part of how it applies to software development?
Yeah.
I think, my tune on this is very much changed over time. I think initially when AI came out and people started using it, and not initially, I'm like, okay, how can I code faster? I think as we've developed our own AI assistant and started to use these tools, I think what we've personally learned is the peripherals are where it's actually better suited, partly because LLMs are not always 100% accurate. So we actually focus on things that aren't necessarily core to coding, like testing, documentation, requirements, other things that are core to the overall software development process, but may not just be only coding. With one exception, I'm sure we'll get into it, where sometimes documentation can actually help with code generation. But my experience with code generation has been good luck. It might work, it might not.
Well, I think we're all trying to figure this out, and even include it. this even includes like product management and prototyping. Like we've had issues at Full Scale Ventures. We're building a couple of our own startups where I feel like sometimes like our product managers spend forever trying to prototype things and build these perfect UX mock-ups and all this stuff, where they could have just told the engineering team like, hey, I need a screen with these 5 columns on it. Go.
Yep.
But no, they're like 700 prompts deep into the perfect UX mock-up.
Yeah.
That's just going to get thrown away anyways because they're not, using it in the right code base and all the different UX stuff and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's another good example of where do we still know yet where these tools are applicable? Like a product manager, spend 1 hour prototyping one of these tools. Don't spend a whole day. You want to get into actually coding and delivery as soon as possible. And I've always been of the belief of if you're going to spend weeks and weeks and weeks prototyping,
but wait
building.
A second. You're thinking like a business owner, not an engineer. The engineers just want to play with the cool tools. They want to play with the Legos. They want to play with the AI and the like most sophisticated architecture AI workflow you've ever seen because it's cool.
You're right. I am thinking like a business owner.
You're thinking about driving results and making money. You're not thinking about this the right way.
Well, the ironic thing is you say that, but we actually spent, and this is like almost in a weird way, slightly embarrassing to say as like a startup founder, but we did this maybe 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, like full transparency, 9 months ago. We hadn't even really done much in our platform with AI. It was very limited. And we had this moment where we felt like this is like a perfect use case for AI. But to your point, what are the boundaries? Should we play around with it for a month? And we actually took 3 weeks and had no results, no outcome, no goal. It was, let's use a bunch of tools, let's play around with things and figure out what could we actually achieve that would be valuable.
A true
which
R&D,
is weird.
True R&D work.
It was 100% R&D, and I woke up every day anxious, being like, we're not like technically building a feature for a customer. We're just experimenting, which was very different from what we've done every other day of the startup. But yeah, I mean, I think with these tools, that's what you actually have to do until the industry figures out where the boundaries of the technology are and what they can be useful for. There is going to be a little bit of experimentation.
But see, nothing has really changed from the perspective I want to get into here, because I've been around working in IT and software engineering for 25 years. And the answer to every question in my entire career has always been, it depends. Should we use this technology? How should this work? Should we use AI for this thing? Should we use cloud? Should we use Azure? Should we use AWS? Should we use containers? Should we use microservices? The answer is always, it depends, every single time, right? And AI is no different. And it just becomes harder and harder to know, like, should we use this? Should we not use this? How much time do we put into it? Like, it's an infinite number of decisions. And as business owners, it's easy for us to like very focus on like, hey, we're focused on this thing. We have urgency to get something delivered and go this direction.
Yep.
But for most big companies and most engineers, that level of ambiguity is just like, spinning around the toilet. Like it's so easy for them to just circles and circles around stuff. And I mean, stuff just doesn't get done.
It's ambiguity, but I've also even heard quite a bit of fear, I would call it, from software developers that because there still isn't 100% clarity on what the tools can do now and in the future, there's fear of what does that mean for my role? Mm-hmm. Now, I personally go back to if you've built these applications using AI, I think you will start to realize that I just fundamentally believe they're not going to replace a human. They augment humans, but there's still that fear and ambiguity for sure. I hear it all the time. I really mean it. Like, I feel like everyone I talk to is in extremes. They're either super bullish, everything's going to be automated, or these tools suck and we should never use them.
Well, so at Full Scale, I've got 70 different teams, different companies we do work for. Mm-hmm. Our team's all based in the Philippines. I've got 275 software engineers or whatever. And so we see a wide variety of AI usage, right, across all of our different clients and different types of work. And there's definitely some of our employees that are scared of it, right? They're scared to be too dependent on it. They're scared of, how it can impact their skills and their career if I become too dependent on this thing, right? Like, people can use AI like it's your second brain, but I think a lot of people also use it like it's their first brain, right? And like, you and I are probably similar age, and I feel like we grew up using Google, and we also learned like I don't have to remember everything. I know I can ask Google and it'll give me the answer to this, right? And AI is the same way, but it's rapidly impacting how software is written too, right? Now it's now I know I can go to AI and ask like, okay, what's the recipe for smoking ribs, and it's going to give it to me every time. I don't need to memorize the damn recipe.
Yeah.
But now it's like code, like, okay, what how do I do this? Connect to the database. How do I do this thing? How do I do this thing?
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's interesting. So your software developers are concerned about being too dependent on AI?
Some of them are, not all of them, but some of them are for sure.
I'll be honest, I don't know if I actually personally have thought about that too much.
Like I'm slowly forgetting how to do these things because I just ask AI to do it now. So I'm not typing the code, right?
You know what it probably is? Given my current role in Jogger, I'm not coding every day. So like, for example, I did actually code yesterday and I was like, chef's kiss, this is awesome. I'm able to get up to speed and ask some questions because I've been a developer before I know what questions to ask to understand the code a little bit more. But on the flip side, I guess I never really thought about it. If you're coding every day, is there also a fear that you become so dependent on something that you forget like core software fundamentals of how to write code? Yeah, I've actually never thought about that, to be honest.
Well, think about something as simple as grammar and spelling, right? Like we all use phones and everything every day that autocorrect a lot of these things. Like you can be really bad at spelling now, and the computer's going to fix a lot of it. And you're not forced to spell it the right way every day. Like it's the same kind of little things like that.
Yeah,
you get so used to the tools.
I have become very dependent when it comes to writing. I'm trying to go back to your question, first brain versus do I treat it as my first brain or second brain? I think I still treat it, when I treated AI as my first brain, the outcomes aren't near as good.
Nope.
But when I treat it as, here are my couple ideas, can you give me a couple more, maybe refine this one, this is what's missing. That, I think I wrote a post about this a couple days ago, or it's coming out soon. I do use AI as like a rubber ducky. If that concept of your software engineer, when you have like a problem and you're like rubber ducking and asking questions and talking to the air, I almost use it like that. And sometimes I'll even use it with voice, where I'll speak my problems and just let it help solve it for me.
And that's a great use case for it. But I think the challenge is a lot of engineers out there are used to being order takers. They're used to getting a requirement and being told, go build this thing, here's the requirements.
Yep.
Where a lot of this higher level thinking, they don't necessarily get to do. And the key is with AI, like if we have to do all this higher level thinking to create the requirements, couldn't I just give those requirements to AI and it writes the code? Versus giving these super detailed level requirements to an engineer. Like to me, I feel like the engineers have got to understand more of the bigger picture and driving more of what's being done and why, right? Like the role has 100%. To adapt to that. Like they cannot live in this world anymore of like, I don't know, I just sit around and somebody gives me these super detailed requirements and I go do exactly what I'm told. I don't really test my code. I just hand it off to QA and then I pick up the next ticket.
If you're getting at the whole, like, what is the role of software engineer in this new world, I do think it is going to change.
It's going to change.
Not the, hey, we're going to replace folks. I actually think it's going to be a little bit more fun because you might have to not work. I guess it depends on the person, but
I think it's going to be way more fun, but I don't think any large company in the world is designed for it, right? Every large company in the world. is very focused on the product team and the leadership team, make all the decisions. They do all the requirements. They hand all the requirements over to the engineering team. The engineering team just implements the requirements. They don't ask a lot of questions. That does not work. It's never worked, honestly. That model has never worked.
I don't know if it's actually
It's never worked. But AI totally destroys all of that.
Just from the perspective that you can take requirements and easily generate something.
If you've got the limitation of how fast a company can innovate has never been how fast they can type code.
Yep.
It has always been focus, making product decisions, taking risks.
Yep.
Like picking a direction and going that way and not getting distracted 100 times. And most companies are terrible at all of that, right? And I don't know. I think my personal opinion is smaller companies are going to do really well with AI if they have engineering teams that think a little more like a product owner. They understand why are we doing this. They're getting feedback from the customers. They can take that. They can adapt. They're not just sitting around waiting for somebody else to figure all that out, waiting for somebody else to figure out the requirements, right? I think smaller teams are going to do really, really well with AI. I don't think most large companies are going to see any benefit from it because their product teams and everybody else have always been the limitation. They've always been the bottleneck.
Well, I think the speed of innovation just in the industry in general right now is so fast that if you're at a big company and you think about, I've worked at some of those companies, you get a project. It was from a customer support ticket submitted 6 months ago. Then you're going to go spend 2 months building out the roadmap for it, getting a team together, another 6 months building it. By that time, you were on model 1 and now we're on model 15 in that same amount of time. So like just how you would implement it if you're going to use AI to help you is drastically changed. I think what might have to change, whether it be small or big company, is the reasoning behind why folks might say we need more upfront discussion is because there's always been a belief that engineering is very expensive. It takes lots of time to build something, so we got to get it right. Now it's like you might be able to get something out there really quick, a lot faster. It may be better off to say we're going to make quick decisions really fast and go. And as long as you're in sort of cut down some of the red tape in between, we don't have to have 10 meetings, just go talk to the customer. And I know you and I spoke about this a little bit, Matt, where I feel like one of the most underutilized tactics for an engineering leader, or even like a product leader, to be honest, is the best person to understand your customer's problem and to solve it is actually your software developer. It's not your product manager. It's not your customer support person. It's your software developer. If you can remove all that red tape, how quickly can you actually solve customer problems?
If you have software engineers that are good at engineering software products, not at engineering code. And the problem is most software engineers these days are good at engineering code, not engineering software, right? Like that's how my career started. Sit down with the customer, talk to the customer, understand their problem, figure out how to engineer a solution to it, and go create it.
I feel like in today's world, the best software developers are going to be folks. First of all, the one thing that is not changing is you still actually have to understand software engineering. I've heard folks be like, oh, well, you can just vibe code an entire product. I'm not a production ready product, but that's the core. That's not changing. But developers that are great communicators, developers that understand not only just the software engineering side of it, but they actually deeply understand their customer, they're going to flourish in this world. They're going to be able to build stuff that's really cool. They're going to be able to move really fast. And think about like, who are the good communicators? Usually good communicators are good writers. And what do you need to be really good at in this world of like AI software development?
They're not usually super introverted software engineers.
It's weird. Like I really mean it. My entire career, the one common denominator across all the best software developers I've worked with is they're great communicators. I've actually met developers that are less technical, but deliver more because they're great communicators. They understand how to speak with product managers, speak with the customer, and they're just technical enough that they can get the job done. this world makes them even more powerful because you don't have to be like the most crazy technical expert. Maybe AI can get you that extra step.
Well,
So
I think
it's definitely changing.
I think to your point earlier, like even if you're using AI, you got to understand some basics of software engineering, and I think that's absolutely the basics of software architecture and UX and understanding the user. And I think a big part of that, and I write about this in my book and Product Driven, is it's having empathy for the user. Like caring about the user is one of the most lost pieces of this for a lot of engineers because they're so far removed from the users, from the customers, and understanding their pain points and how they use the product and all that stuff. And
and this will be a little plug for your book. I haven't read your book yet. I definitely signed up for it though. What is your like TLDR on how to address that gap of getting the software engineer team to be more empathetic with the user and care more?
I mean, to me, it's all of a leadership. It starts with leadership. Leaders got to spend a few minutes a week talking about, hey, we did this release last week. How did it go? How did it impact the users? This is the feedback we got. This is, the changes we need to make, et cetera. And then also getting the engineers from time to time more involved in, watching demos or sitting in on sales calls or looking at support tickets or, actually being the support team, doing on-site visits, any way at all that they can get exposure to the customer is really important. And one thing I read about in the book is kind of redefining the definition of done. Like done can't mean like I checked in my code and I'm done. Like done needs to be like, you saw this thing all the way to production and you figured out if this really mattered to the customer and how they used it.
Yeah.
Like, and having empathy for like, did what I create, did it actually work?
Yep.
Did it matter to the customer? And as a business owner, you get that, right? You're like, we did this big release. I want to hear from a customer's like, how did it go?
It'd be like if the engineers are the builders in the company and like super high level, engineers are the builders, you got the seller, the sales folks are the ones actually selling the product. It'd be like a salesperson going to the pitch call and then just not, stopping there. Like that's not the full follow through of did we actually close the deal? Did we release this feature? Was it actually used? I've actually had this, I've absolutely zero way to measure this. I am convinced that as a country, industry, whatever, we are wasting billions of dollars on features that no one cares about.
Oh, I mean, there are studies like Pindo did a study. I think it was like 80% of software features are either rarely or never used. It's a huge number.
Yeah,
we also know 90% of startups fail, right? So like 90% of it off the top on the startup side eventually dies.
It's something being in a startup environment I think about all the time in terms of how do you validate and understand what to actually build. And I think it's obviously a very difficult problem if 80% of features aren't being used. I don't know if you speak too much about this in the book, but I've had so many different experiences on how to do this. Some, whether it be user interviews, sometimes even going a little bit with, I don't want to say gut because gut is still based on some level of data. I don't know if do you talk much about that in the book? Because that is something that as a startup founder, we're thinking about all the time. How do you actually understand and make sure you're building the right thing? Yeah.
So in the book, there's the product driven model, and part of it is about focus and vision and clarity. And those are all kind of related to this. I think the big one there is focus, and being ruthless about saying no is part of it. Even at full scale ventures like today, I'm talking to our product manager and our head of engineering about the same thing because they inevitably always try and do things we don't need to do. And I keep constantly telling them we need to say, your job is to say no as much as possible. Like you guys get so distracted thinking we need to build this and we need to build that. It's like, it's called minimal viable product for a reason. Like, how do we simplify this down? And they inevitably just always get sidetracked and make things a little more complicated. I have to keep reminding them over and over and over of like, what is the minimum we need to do? Like, what is the simplest thing we need to do here?
Yeah.
And some of it as engineers, and this is one thing I talk about in the book is, as leaders, we've got to discuss the trade-offs. Like why did we decide to do it this way and not do it this way? And that's part of what I talked to my team about this morning. It's like, we decided to do it this way. It's like, we don't need to import historical information because our product will work fine without it. They can wait a week or two, and we don't need the history. And I think part of it is making sure you explain all of that. So, and instead of them sitting around like, well, I don't know, we're not importing history. Why aren't we doing that? Well, maybe we should. Let's just go do it anyways. Versus them remembering the conversation are like, no, he specifically said we're not importing history because of X, Y, Z. And then like, no, we're not going to do that because Matt said because of X, Y, Z. That's why. Right. Like, but if I feel like as leaders and founders, the hardest part for us a lot of times is getting it all out of our head. Like, we instinctively know a lot of the product vision and what we want to build and why we want to build it that way and how it should work. It's in our head. But our hardest job is getting it out of our head. And the only way to get that out of our head is to explain the why behind all of it. Right. You can't just tell them what to do. You got to explain the why. Like, why are you thinking about it this way? That's the only way they're going to be able to remember it and act on it.
That's a little plug there for engineering docs, or just actually documentation in general. Like, part of the benefit, not even just being, is it an asset that can be reused, but there's also, I've learned from my own personal experience, when you're forced to write something down, it requires a deeper level of thinking than just saying, we're going to do this, but why? I don't really know. I haven't thought about it. And there's so much benefit in just going through that process, even if you almost took it and threw it away afterwards, because it requires you to think so much deeper.
Well, I think part of it is when you're innovating and you're building stuff, and I know you can relate to this as an engineer, a lot of times we don't necessarily know what we're doing, but we're figuring it out as we go. And that is the hard part about it, because you're saying, well, before you start, you need to write all this documentation and write down all the requirements or write all the unit tests or whatever, and then go write the first line of code. But that's not how a lot of innovation works, right? A lot of it is like trial and error and trying things. Right? Is this going to work? Whatever. But at the end of that, you still need some documentation around, why did you do it this way? Why didn't you do it a different way? This is how it works. This is why it works this way.
What I always recommend to folks is, in terms of, like, if I think about like documentation and how it serves a software team, and if I think about it in like very linear, like at the far left is when you're thinking about that's built something. And I usually like to keep this really lean, but it's almost, you have to be clear about the problem statement. If you can't write a clear problem statement, then you're going to almost guarantee you're going to be in that 80 percentile.
It's the, why are we doing this? Let's start there.
The problem statement, what are you doing? Why is it impactful? Why does the customer care? If you can't answer those questions, don't move on. Then I usually recommend, this is why I call it the spirit of tech design spec, whatever. Some features require it, some don't. The spirit of it is, think a little bit before you just jump into coding. Sometimes it requires you to put an RFC together. Sometimes you just should go in and tinker like you were suggesting. I think the outcome on, once you build the feature, that's the critical part. You need to actually say, this is what we did and why. And I think the actual artifact drastically depends on what you've actually built. Diagrams are usually better than anything, but document your decision making, especially the ones the things that aren't apparent. Don't document everything. There's definitely a thing of overdoing it, but document why you did something a certain way.
Well, I want to talk for a minute as we wrap up the show today about your guys' product. And I understand and believe that docs are really important, but I always feel like when people put docs in any kind of outside system like Confluence or different knowledge-based kind of things, it is inevitably always out of date. And I feel like, 9 times out of 10, nobody ever even looks at it anyways. No. So tell me about how you guys solve this problem. And I like how you guys solve this problem. So tell me more about it.
Yeah. So the AI assistant we're building, it's a GitHub app you install in your repository. It could be public or private repository. And how it works is similar to any other status check you may run, whether it be for your builds, testing, whatever it may be. We run a status check on every pull request. There's a couple things we're looking for in that status check, but generally speaking, our goal is to make your documentation awesome. So part of that may be, are there gaps in your documentation that need to be addressed? And part of it maybe, are there pieces of documentation that are going stale? If we find any of that, we integrate directly into that process and just open a PR for your review. So I think part of it is actually solving the problem. And then the other part is what you were alluding to, which is if you want software developers to love a tool and use it, you got to be a part of their workflow, which is some of the downsides of like a Confluence, for example.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of being able to put markdown and comments and stuff like that in the repository. So it's easy to check it in, and it's just part of, the rest of the process. Same thing for like SQL changes need to be done. It's easier to just commit them in the, repo, and it goes part of the artifacts of the deployment and all that. It just makes it easier in the workflow.
If you treat documentation like you do code, even without Jogger, you're almost guaranteed to have higher quality docs. And I think the additional, since we're talking about AI, the additional benefit, again, whether you're using Jogger or not, that everyone should be aware of is documentation makes code generation work way better. And there's been different patterns that people have come out with, but if you understand how these tools are working, they're looking for context in your repo to answer your question. Well, back to what I was saying before, if you're documenting the decisions, if you have good guides and tutorials and things like that, all of a sudden, the AI starts performing much better. So there's almost a dual, it's for humans, but now it's also for AI.
Well, I think Jogger sounds really cool. I haven't played with it myself yet, but I think it sounds really cool. You guys can check it out at joggr.ai. Looks really cool. Well, Seth, thanks for being on the show today. Is there any other way people can follow you or learn more that we should let them know about?
The website is the best. The second best is I'm very active on LinkedIn, so connect with me there. I share a lot about our journey, insights, some things I've shared here as well.
That's how I found you. So once again, this is Seth Rosenbauer. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Take care. Before we wrap up today's episode, we have a special resource for you if you're looking to elevate your development team to have more of a product-driven mindset. I have a fantastic free ebook about turning your code-first team into a product-first team. Please go to fullscaleteam.com/product-first-teams to download this free ebook. There's also a link in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Product Driven, and we'll see you in the next episode.